And we are now live. The attendees are starting to join.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Roman, Chair of the Big Cypress Basin Board, and I'd like to call the May 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Big Cypress Basin Board to order. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask that staff and the board to unmute themselves and then remute yourself after the pledge. I'd like to ask Board Member Dan Waters to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And thank you, and good afternoon, Ms. Roman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dan. A couple of housekeeping items before we continue. We really appreciate everyone joining us for this public meeting. As you have noticed, we are practicing social distancing according to the leadership and guidance of the CDC, our governor, and local government. The health and safety of our community is our top priority, and we are pleased you are joining us today via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to address the board may use the raise the hand feature on Zoom. If members of the public are having trouble and need help, please go to our website, sfwmd.gov, and click the orange Ask Us button at the top of the page. If you are using a phone and would like to comment during the meeting, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Board members, I'm going to ask you to also use the raise the hand feature during this meeting, except when making a motion or seconding a motion. In those instances, just please unmute yourself and announce your name and then make the motion or the second. During the presentations, you can raise your hand at any time during the meeting if you have a question, and I will call on you. For the actual voting, I will be conducting a roll call vote. Please unmute yourself to cast your vote when I call your name. Lisa, are there any agenda revisions for this meeting today?
No, Madam Chair, there are no revisions.
Okay, thank you. The next item is abstention by board members for items on the agenda. I'm going to ask each of the board members as I call on you to let me know if you have any abstentions or disclosures on the agenda. Ms. Mariel Najan de Lestang.
No, I do not.
Mr. Dan Waters.
I do not.
And I do not have any. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes for the February 21st meeting. Are there any board member changes to the February 21st meeting minutes?
No, on Marielle Naijan de Litan.
And this is Dan. I do not have any either.
If there are no additions or corrections, could I have a motion and a second to approve the February 21st meeting minutes?
I'll make, this is Marielle. I will make a motion to pass the February 20 minutes for February 21st meeting.
And this is Dan. I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. And the result of the vote is the minutes are approved 3-0. The next topic on the agenda is general public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to speak, you may use the raise the hand feature in Zoom. If you are using a phone and would like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. When you are called on, staff will unmute your line for you. The 3-minute comment guideline will apply. You will see a timer on your screen, and we appreciate you abiding by this. Rosie, are there any members of the public who would like to speak and have their hands raised?
Madam Chair, we have one hand raised so far, and that's Jeffrey Jordan. Mr. Jordan, if you could unmute yourself.
Unmuted.
Perfect, we can hear you.
So my time starts now?
It does.
Okay. What we are talking about here today, or what is important to me in this meeting, is the section of canal that runs between Airport Road and this structure called GGE1, which is the last weir that exists before everything runs into the Gulf. It was proposed to us about a year ago after they came through and cleared the north bank of any vegetation other than areca palms that were supposed to provide privacy between the golfers and those of us that own homes and have very nice backyards. That was done without notice to us, and we were not completely thrilled with it. Over the last year, they've come through quarterly and simply mowed down all plants, grasses, trees, anything that exists as far as foliage. And after some further research, it turns out that even the invasive species that are growing on the bank are not being taken care of by the contractor that's taking care of the bank, because after going over there and speaking with them, they don't have the license to use the herbicide chemicals that should be taken care of in order to get rid of the invasive species. In addition, they're eradicating all species of land without looking for nesting birds, which they told us they had surveyed, and they lied to us. There was no survey done. They cannot prove that they have a survey done and that they have no paperwork to justify it. The other things that we have are Bear's Paw 30 years ago came through and leased us our own land in this easement that they're trying to clear on our properties. We each paid many hundreds of dollars for use of the land, and the land is now, I understand, 1 year ago in the possession of Collier County and South Florida Water Management. The land is not being taken care of as it should be taken care of.
Mr. Jordan, were you finished?
I was not finished. The timer on my computer told me time's up.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrea Threlkeld, followed by Brad Cornell.
Hello, this is Andrea Threlkeld. Can you hear me clearly?
We hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, board members and staff. My family lives along the south side of the canal, which y'all refer to as GGE1. One day last June, I came home to see the trees on the north side of the canal torn out, leaving gaping holes and dead trees along the bank and allowing us to see and hear directly into Bear's Paw's private community. By the way, you should see the cars and trucks, including South Florida Water Management District trucks, speeding up and down that utility road. We bought our house because of the privacy and the wildlife surrounding it with our young children. And then one day last year, it was all gone. After doing a lot of research on my own, I found out that this was part of a South Florida Water Management District project to clear the banks along the canals and potentially avoid trees falling into the water. Our main concerns were, number one, the way it was left looking dead and empty. And number two, what happened to all the nests, endangered species, and species that are part of the Imperial Species Management Plan? In communication with South Florida Water Management District, they told me that an arborist or biologist did a survey before they tore down the trees, and that with the help of Bear's Paw, they would replant trees in the empty spaces and re-beautify the area. Then, almost a year later, we were told that South Florida Water Management District was going to use their 20-foot easement to come onto the south side, which is our backyards, and clear all trees, vegetation, and privacy bushes 20 feet from the top of the bank. On a side note, the trees remaining on the Bear's Paw side are not 20 feet back. Board members, I respectfully ask that you look into the following. Number one, when I asked for the biologist survey, they told me that I would get a copy, and then they told me there was not one done. Number two, almost a year later, the canal bank still has not been replanted to re-beautify as promised. And when the contractors come to clear the vegetation, they either dump the clippings into the canal or just leave them to turn brown and dead again. And finally, number three, please, before destroying the south side of the bank and watching it go through the disaster of the north side, I invite you to physically come into our backyards and see what would actually happen if all the trees, vegetation, and privacy bushes were torn out. We are asking politely for a compromise before this destruction begins. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brad Cornell.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, good. I appreciate the opportunity to address you all. I'm Brad Cornell, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida. This issue of canal maintenance and vegetation maintenance in general on public lands is an important one. I have heard about this issue of canal maintenance, and I've witnessed it myself in Golden Gate Estates along the I-75 canal and other canals, and also on parklands. So it's not just an issue relevant to the Water Management District or the Big Cypress Basin. I guess I'd like to share with you that I have heard about this issue at length from Emeritus Ornithology Professor Dr. Jerry Jackson, the Out with the Wild Things guy on WGCU. He has many times shared with audiences the importance of the timing as well as the method of vegetation maintenance on public lands, including places like canals. So I guess what I'd like to suggest the Big Cypress Basin Board consider is looking into some alternative ways of maintaining banks, top of banks, the sides, looking at perhaps what materials are used, native materials, native ground covers, and the timing of these issues relative to wildlife, and not just birds, wildlife like big cypress fox squirrels, and depending on where canals or public lands are. These are issues that I think could be addressed without compromising the maintenance objectives that the basin has. So with that, perhaps one way to do this would be look at a pilot project in a section of canal and maybe work with some stakeholders or some informed partners to try and figure out some ways to increase wildlife protection and habitat values while still accomplishing maintenance objectives. So just want to share that with for some consideration. Thanks.
Madam Chair, there are no additional hands that are raised.
Thank you very much, Rosie, and thank you for the members of the public for your comments. We'll now move to Lucinay Dadrian's capital plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and fellow Basin Board members. Lucinay Dadrian, I'm a project management section administrator in the Engineering Construction Bureau. And I'm here today to present the Big Cypress Basin capital project updates. So we have several projects that are ongoing in design and construction. The first one up for discussion today is electrification and remote operations. Currently, package 1, which consists of 3 structures to add powered operations, has been awarded to DN Higgins for the amount of $640,000. The contractor has applied for a Collier County right-of-way permit to perform the work along the roadway there. And at this time, currently, there are no delays due to COVID-19 downtime. So that is moving forward currently on time. Package 2 includes the design of Cork 2 remote ops and FACA Union 5 generator building. We have successfully negotiated the right-of-way easements along both of these structures, and we have transferred $50,000 to Collier County to complete those negotiations. And with those negotiations underway, we are moving forward on the final design deliverable that is in progress. The remote monitoring communication project is a multi-year project, and this year, one of the items we are focusing on is the upgrades to the GG1, 2, and 3 from local control at the structure to remote operations. And this includes all the local control panel hardware modifications as well as programming. Testing was completed on Golden Gate 1, and this showed that there were some additional modifications that are required to make these 3 sites remotely operable. Staff is working towards a full implementation of these upgrades, and we're hoping to have this complete by the end of the summer. This work order, we have a work order revision that's in progress for this, and it's approximately $22,000. We have a series of canal improvements that we're looking at that came out of the level of service analysis this past year. It includes 3 different groups of canals. Group 1 includes executed work order with Stanley Consultants in the amount of $357,000, and it looks at I-75 and Green Canal improvements, as well as the possible removal of I-75 weir number 1 and excavation at the intersection of I-75 and Golden Gate main canals. Currently, the topographic and hydrographic surveys are complete, as well as the existing conditions model. It is complete and under review. And once that's complete, we'll move forward into the analysis of the design storms, as well as improvements that can be made. We're also working on we executed a work order revision for some additional modeling and survey at the I-75 and Golden Gate intersection in the amount of $94,000. This project's on target for completion by November 2020. Group 2 canals include the C1 connector canal as well as the Miller Canal. This work order was executed with Taylor Engineering in the amount of $604,000. It includes the C1 connector structure evaluation as well as canal improvements. We have also completed the surveys and existing conditions model, and this final report will be due in January. Canal improvements group 3 includes the full Cypress Canal, and I'd like to highlight that this work is being done internally with Big Cypress Basin staff as well as staff at headquarters. It's a great team effort to complete this analysis. It includes the evaluation of the entire length of the Cypress Canal and the new proposed Cypress Canal #1 water control structure that is being moved south and west for the Vanderbilt Beach Road extension. Again, this is in the same time frame. The surveys are complete and the existing conditions modeling is complete, and we are on target for this one for fall 2020. A look ahead of some of the projects that are moving forward into construction. The SCADA stilling well package #1 installs new stilling well platforms between Golden Gate 6 and 7 as a tailwater stilling well, DeSoto 10 headwater stilling well, and Cork 1 tailwater stilling well. We look forward to ready to advertise plans by the end of July. The Miller Weir #3 gate replacement. This project replaces double leaf gates that were binding with single leaf gates to improve reliability and operations. This is currently out to bid, and we are targeting a June governing board for this project. The Cypress Canal structure #1 is in design, and this project relocates the structure south of Vanderbilt Beach Road, as I mentioned, with the final design package currently in review, and we are hoping for a ready to advertise package by the end of September. So one of my last slides is the 5-year capital improvement plan, and this is an update from the fiscal year 2020-2021 preliminary to tentative. It includes the changes for 2021. Going down the list, we have SCADA replacements. This is for package #2 of the work that is being worked on this fiscal year. We have electrification and remote operations, an additional 1.1 million. This is for package 2 of the electrification work that's in design. We reduced the canal improvements 2021 through the out years to because this is more of a concept, and until we determine what we're designing and constructing, we've reduced that capital expenditures down. We've also moved out the design starts of the C1 connector canal control gate, as well as the Cork 3 replacement and I-75 weir removal. So those designs have been moved out a year or two as needed based on the priorities of the capital program and funding that's available. So overall, the 5-year plan has been reduced overall to be under 4 million per year. This is to match up our expenditures with our revenues that will be coming in. And specifically in fiscal year 2020-21, we were looking at a reduction of 815,000 from preliminary to tentative. And with that, I will open up questions.
Now, board members, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I have a question, Lucine. Regarding the Cypress Canal structure #1, is that the structure that we're in close coordination with the county on in terms of timing and phasing of that project?
Yes, that's correct. The structure needs to be replaced, but because the county is widening the roadway, Vanderbilt Beach Road, we are relocating the structure. So we are timing that design to go out to construction with the county's timeframe of building their road.
And right now the coordination is going smoothly and you don't see any challenges moving forward?
Everything's smooth, and at this time, no challenges have presented themselves.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rosie, do you have any public comment on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Jeffrey Jordan. Mr. Jordan lowered his hand, Madam Chair, and that's,
No, I'm still here.
okay, thank you, Mr. Jordan.
All
You're up.
right. I was not finished talking about the first situation, if that's okay, if I continue on that.
Mr. Jordan, there's another public comment period later on in the meeting. If you wouldn't mind holding that comment until then, please.
That would be fine. I appreciate the extra time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's it for the public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the tentative budget discussion with Candy Heater.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Basin Board members. Today, I would like to provide to you an update as a current status of your fiscal year 2021 tentative budget. The purpose of today's presentation on the budget is to give a snapshot as to where your staff are in the development process of your tentative Big Cypress Basin 2021 budget. Briefly discuss some of the changes from the preliminary time frame to the tentative draft that we're at right now, as well as to get board direction and feedback prior to the July meeting, which is the next discussion on the tentative budget, as to if there are any additional changes or areas that you would like for us to concentrate on to bring back to you at the tentative budget discussion. So as I always do, I try to illustrate some of the development milestones that we have completed, which you see we've made great strides and great headway with this budget development process starting in October. And now looking ahead, kind of the key dates that we need to stay focused on, which is July 6th, as I had briefly mentioned earlier, as the next Basin Board meeting to discuss the tentative budget and the tentative millage. And then the August meeting where we will discuss the approval of the final budget and millage. And then for the public to see that there are additional meetings that finalize the district's overall budget in September, 2 public hearings, September 10th and then September 22nd. So moving on to the discussion on the current status and the changes. Right now, the tentative budget is a $14.3 million budget for the 2021 Big Cypress Basin draft tentative budget. At the preliminary time frame when we presented to you and the public, it was at $15.4 million. Staff has worked very diligently to take into consideration changes that has occurred over the months, a better understanding of what may be needed starting October 1 of 2020 for the 2021 fiscal year, and then tried to better align the request of the 2021 tentative budget. By doing so, we've also looked at our revenues, and we've been provided a little bit of additional information or know a little bit more. And right now, we have made some strides in being able to add some additional revenue for the service center lease of about $49,580, which is funding that we did not have at the time, or did not have an agreement, or extended agreement at the point we were discussing the preliminary budget. And I'll turn it over to Lisa. She'd like to give the Basin Board and the public a little bit of an update on that.
Sure. Thank you, Candy. So as Candy was just saying, we have some anticipated revenue coming in for the next fiscal year. We were happy to renew a one-year lease with Collier County Tourism. So they will be with us for one more year, and that is in our building next door to us. And so once that lease is up next May, we will come back to the board to see what our next steps in for that time.
Thank you, Lisa. Moving on, we do have some additional revenues. Like I said, we've got several months under our belt, and we have looked at the financials and encumbrances. And there's about $24,900 that we were able to disencumber as some of our regional project contracts have come in under the amount that was contracted out. And there's a little bit of savings of $24,900 that we have added as a potential revenue that we would like to propose to help offset some of the regional project expenses that's being proposed in this tentative budget. Reserves, because staff did reduce some of the requests in the tentative budget, this yields less of a need of reserves. Your cash balances. So in the preliminary time frame, we were estimating we need about 2.3 million, and right now it looks as though that we will only need about 1.2 million, which is a $1.1 million reduction. So overall, the change from preliminary to tentative, as mentioned, is about $1 million.
Thank you, Candy, for that report. Do any of the board members have any questions or discussion on what Candy has presented?
Hey, Charlotte, it's Dan. One quick question. Lisa and Candy did a nice job on this summary table showing what the deviations are from the preliminary to the proposed budget. It's a small number in the grand scheme of things. It's only $12,000. So relatively small for the drone purchase. I was just curious, Lisa, or if it's somebody else that'll answer this. What's our plan for that? Is that $12,000 to a contractor that'll fly the canals and give us videos or some kind of information, or do we have somebody on staff that would have the ability to operate the drone and do that work for us, where it's a one-time purchase?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that question. So the district is moving forward with a drone program, and we are taking advantage of that. So that purchase you see is for the service center to purchase that drone, and we will have one of our members on the team that will go through the license to operate that drone. So we will be able to fly that at any time that the basin needs to have information.
Okay, good. And then so obviously we'd fly that after storms, or if there was, a problem that we were looking to address, so we wanted to see it quickly. And then are we going to have a program where, in the end of the dry season, or just periodically we're flying these two to look for encroachments or, things we need to deal with?
Absolutely. All of those things. We would see it as one of, a valuable tool for pre-storms as well as post-storms. When we're talking about all of these canal improvements, we would intend on using the drone to do assessments for us so that we can start having a full knowledge of the issues with our canals or any challenges that we have. And so we could start ranking those and put those in an order for our capital plan as we move forward. So yes, all of the things that you mentioned is what we intend to do with as part of our drone program.
Okay.
Mr. Waters, this is Derek Brown, if I may. The drone program has very specific uses at the district that will be further vetted, and we'd be happy to provide more information to the Basin Board as that program moves forward. There are certain limitations within the drone program that would be better served at a later presentation or a briefing for the board members.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Derek. It, relatively small part of the change to the budget. So yeah, we can talk about it another time. Was just curious if it was going to be a ongoing or a one-time thing. So thank you both.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that we could look at maybe adding that to a future agenda for Derek to come back and explain the program to us. I really want to commend the staff on the service center lease. I know they worked very hard, Lisa and the district staff together. So that was really a welcome news, and I really appreciate it. We'll go ahead, Candy. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moving on to the next slide is our typical picture pie chart. For those who don't like to look at charts and would rather look at a pie chart, the takeaway from this slide is that the ad valorem taxes estimated right now at $10.8 million, is the largest source of funding for the Big Cypress Basin's budget. And then as well as usage of cash balances of about $3.2 million at 23%. That $3.2 million does include the $2 million reserves that has been set aside by the Basin Board for emergency usages deemed by the board and approved to be used. Now moving on, we discussed the revenue side. Now we'll discuss the expenditure side that helps drive those revenue changes. The expenditures, this is the operating budget. The operating budget in the preliminary time frame was about $8.9 million and has been reduced down to $8.6 million for about a $237,000 reduction or change from the preliminary time frame. Flood control ops did reduce their budget down by $185,000, and that was basically due to some loggernet conversions, some equipment that has been purchased, and that this phase of the conversion for the analog to digital is going to be completed this year, as well as some survey support for some projects. The next category of field equipment and fleet replacement has been looked at as a 5-year plan that's being worked on, and staff has reduced the fleet down by $167,500. That program is being looked at also to do some cost sharing with other field stations to determine if there's more efficient ways of purchasing equipment and using it amongst the field stations for cost sharing. So there has been a $167,000 reduction there pertaining to some equipment that they are either going to cost share, push off, or they no longer need at the moment. Land Stewardship Group has about a $50,000 request to the board as an increase. That $50,000 is related to the CREW exotic plant control within the Collier County portion of CREW. The modeling and monitoring support has about a $41,000 request, And this is related to some of the Basin County Stormwater Master Plan update that is required every 10 years, as well as an offsetting reduction of the Big Cypress Basin Instruction Rating Development, where there's been some completed projects in the 20 budget. And then moving along just down to the regional partnership project, about a $15,900 increase, and that is what is being offset by that $24,900 that was requested through the rebudgeting of revenues. So moving on to this slide, this is just a recap of what Lucine had just presented, so I won't spend any time on this, but just so that the presentation nets and balances, you saw that the reduction was over $200,000 in the operating and in the capital program, yielding a reduction of $800,000, which nets together the $1 million reduction, as was described on the revenue side. This again is a pie chart. It's a rather busy pie chart, but it does illustrate all the different categories that the Basin Board has expenses within: flood control operations, as well as capital projects, and the regional projects and reserves being the largest 4 categories within the Basin's budget. So what we should expect, and what staff does know that I would like to report to the board and to those listening today, is that we do know that there will be some revenue changes whenever we do come back to the July meeting. Right now, it's still an estimate that we're working from with the ad valorem taxes based on, taxable values that we had a purview of around the January timeframe. But once those final taxable values come in July, we'll be bringing a more stable projected revenue for the ad valorem taxes, as well as the investment income. We're going to continue to watch that over the months during this current year on how the investment income is yielding as far as revenues, and determine, if we need to make any changes, within the investment income as well. And with that, I would like to ask if the board has any direction or any additional areas that they would like staff to focus on before we do come back to you in July, or anything further you would like for us to dig into and provide a better explanation on.
Is there any board questions or discussions? Any comments? One of the things that I will share, I see Muriel's got her hand raised. That's terrific. One of the comments that I would like to make is the fact that I've asked staff to look at a 5-year forecast to kind of take a look at how we see things unfolding after this major disruption from COVID-19. And so I hope that they'll be able to come back and talk to us more about that in the future. Muriel, go ahead.
Hi, this is Marielle. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Candy and Lucine for your presentations. And I also wanted to thank staff for kind of looking further into the large equipment alternatives, because it can get really expensive, and if it's not something we need every day. So I really appreciate you guys looking into that further, and I noticed that the money came down, so that's really good news, and that you're considering other alternatives. So that was it. I just want to say thank you.
Great. Rosie, do we have any hands raised from the public who would like to comment on this item?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to board comment. Are there any board members who would like to share any comments at this time? I have a comment for the board that I will save to the end of the meeting for our next board comment. We'll go ahead and go with the technical reports, the field station activity report by Juan Betancourt.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Juan Betancourt. I'm the PCB field station superintendent. I will be reporting on the field station activities. This is the overview of the activities that I'm going to be talking about for the field station. So I will be pointing out some of the tri-season activities. I'll give you a quick status on the fleet replacement for our fiscal year and the 3-month outlook. On GG6 and GG7 structure, we performed the 5-year preventative maintenance to the 2 gearboxes. Along with that, we replaced the stem covers on these structures. That is just to ease up checking the gate level position and to protect the stems from dust and dirt. And you can see some before, during, and after pictures of the GG6 and GG7 structure. On this slide, sorry, let me go back. On slide 5, on slide 4, this is part of our canal inspections. We found some erosion issues on the FU1 canal on the east side of the Orchid Cove development along US 41. So please see the before, during, and after pictures on the canal bank repairs. And this was about 50 feet, which we worked on. On my next slide, as part of our structure inspection program, we have been replacing stem boots throughout the PCB structures. These stem boots must be made exactly for the length of the stems for each structure. They do have a long lead time, between 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the length, and they can be quite expensive. An average of $1,300 to $1,500 each. And again, you can see some before, during, and after pictures of the stem boots replacement, in this particular case for the Coco 1 structure. On the Airport Road Canal, and as part of our continuous canal maintenance, we had to clean up weeds and debris along the canal. And again, you can see some before, during, and after pictures of all the debris and weeds that we picked up. In the Henderson Canal, we have been removing vegetation and debris as well. In this case, I would like to point out the use of our new Long Reach, which I have a picture later on my presentation, and a picture of the new equipment, and has been a great tool for mechanical harvesting of all our canals. Again, as part of our structure inspection program repairs, we have been installing missing tough booms in all structures. In this slide, you can see the tough booms being installed on I-75 number 2. did have to replace also the bow barriers at this structure because some of the barriers were cracked and fading and in bad shape. And again, you see some before, during, and after pictures. On this slide, there are 6 adopted canal signs that were replaced this year. We have throughout the BCB AOR area of responsibility, we have 14 of those signs. So this year we had to refurbish 6 of them, and those are the locations. Again, this is just our fleet replacement status. This is a quick picture of our new Long Reach, and we just got it on March this year. I wanted to bring you up to date on how the equipment looks. And on the 3-month outlook, we're going to be continuing mechanical harvesting and preventative maintenance in preparation for wet season and hurricane season on the following canals: the Golden Gate Canal, Airport Canal, Henderson Canal, 951, and Corkscrew Canal. And then, of course, we have to continue on our 5-year preventative maintenance on gearboxes. And the ones coming up are going to be Henderson number 1 and number 2, and the 951 structure. And then we will continue with our structure inspection program repairs, for which this year we had 105 items. We have completed so far 50% of these items. And some of the activities that we're going to continue on are going to be on GG5, the rip-wrap repair on GG1. There is some corrosion on the grating, so we're going to be repairing that. We will be repairing or replacing on FU4 the safety rails and painting the structure. And on the I-75 one, we will be doing some erosion repairs. And on I-75 2, we will be adding some rip-wraps. So unless you have any questions, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan, for your presentation. I had one question. How do we stand in our preparations for hurricane season?
Well, we had already prepared our SOP, which has been already reviewed by our bureau chiefs. And coming up in June, we're going to have a flight inspection over all our canals. That's going to be in addition to everything that we have been working on throughout this month. So that will get us ready for hurricane season.
Are there any other board questions or comments for Juan? Rosie, do you have any raised hands for public comment?
We do, Madam Chair. Andrea Threkold, followed by Steve Meek.
Hi, this is Andrea Threlkow. Can everybody hear me again, please?
We hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I have sat through a presentation similar to that in the past, and I too have some before, during, and after pictures that I would love to share with the board if and when everybody is ready for that.
Ma'am, if that's a question, you can send those photos to Lisa Keeler, who will share those with the board.
Okay, it was more of a comment, but yes, I will do that. Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Meek.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hi, Mr. Meek, you're on.
Okay. I had something for Juan there. I was looking at the first picture that he put up, and it showed the Golden Gate number 1 weir down there. Is it possible he could put that back up on for viewing? Is that possible?
Unfortunately, I can't because of the timer. Thank you.
Well, it seems like there's a problem where if they go from the Bears Paw side, which would be the north side, to the south side, from what I understand, when they built that canal, the bridge going over, they actually blocked the access. And they did have access at one time. We had like a 30-foot easement from Longboat Drive, which is south side, going into our side. Now, from what I understand, when they built the canal, there's no way to get across. And there's no way to get into our backyards to pull trees out. Now, going back about a little over 30 years ago, I purchased this property. The back section where we're talking about on the south side of the canal was totally overgrown. I removed almost all the trees and just left a couple of trees up that are pleasant looking. And I know that everybody up and down the canal did that. We have maintained for 30 years our backyard. And now today, they want to come along and just chop our trees down. And I think, as Jeff Jordan said, they want to unlandscape our backyard. And that's very, very upsetting. The other problem is that I see is over on the north side, that's the Bears Paw side. They cut a deal with Bears Paw because they wanted to use the roadway over there. And they planted trees from one end, palm trees, basically, from one end to the other end. And those trees are only a few feet off the canal. They're barely at the top of the bank. Those trees aren't being maintained. They're not supposed to be over 25 feet. I was reading some of your rules and regulations on it, and they're way over 25 feet. That's pretty much what I have to say about the whole thing. I think we should try to at least come with a compromise as far as the south side is concerned, particularly considering the fact that we maintain that side, and you can't even get at it to maintain it. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Next, we have Dana McGregor.
Hi, my name is Dana McGregor. I've lived out in Golden Gate Estates since before 1997. I lived on my parents' had a house on the canal, off the Factory Union Canal, since I think 1989. So I've lived on this Factory Union Canal a better part of my life. And the past couple of years they've came in, and I'm gonna kind of echo what the gentleman before me said, is they came in and they started chopping trees down. Now I live on the canal and have had actually, I've had erosion that is beyond what's called erosion. Part of my house has actually started to stair step. And since you all have cut the trees down out in the estates and we have nothing to say about it, we had a wind tunnel effect come down that canal after Hurricane Irma, and it lifted the whole back portion of not only my house, but 90% of the houses on this canal. So we have no windbreaks anymore, and you see all the beautification going on in town. I guess my question is when are they going to start helping us not just chop our trees down, but maintain the canal bank? Because I own 50% of the canal, but I can't do anything with it. And half of the year it's completely dry. So it's a kind of a two-part question. Are they looking at repairing the canal banks for us? Every time I lose 5 feet or 10 feet into the canal, that drops my property line backwards because nobody knows where the property line starts and ends. So maybe you can kind of steer me in the right direction as to when are they going to start giving us water? And then when are they going to start helping maintain the canal bank if they're going to let it go dry and then saturate us during hurricane season? After they've cut all the trees down and there's no root base.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Next, we have that was all the public comment we have on this one, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to our public speakers. Let's move on to the water conditions report by Brad Jackson.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Basin Board members. It's always a privilege to be able to present to you the water conditions report since our last board meeting, and just kind of want to give us an update on where we've been since our last board meeting and kind of go through conditions as they are today and maybe take a glimpse forward into the future a little bit with the weather conditions. So I'll just jump in right here with the kind of the monthly summary of this year so far to date. As we normally do, 2020 here, we started in January. The big item to note here is our March rainfall or lack thereof. We've had one of our driest March ever. And here our 2020 year-to-date total is 7.5 inches compared to what we normally get is about 11. And we're running about 65% of normal for this time of year so far. So I'll kind of walk through the months we've had since our last board meeting. And I put these in here just to show the wide variability of the rainfall we receive can receive every month. It is again, this February was slightly below average, but just looking at the delta here, at the difference here between the 5.5 inches and the 0.1 inches a couple of years apart, just the variability of the system and the weather that we get here. Moving on to March here, as I mentioned, this was our driest March on record, not only for the basin, but for the district as a whole. And I believe their period of record goes back around 90 years or so. So moving on from that, April finally broke our trend for below average rainfall. I would note that this rainfall kind of had bookends on the month. Half the rain was on the first of the month and half the rain was on the last day of the month. So the majority of April was extremely hot and extremely dry, even though it did end up coming above average as shown here. In May so far, we've had about 2 inches so far, and this is through yesterday's rainfall totals. It shows below average, but we're pretty much on track as long as the rain continues for the rest of this month going forward. But it's a far cry from what we had so far back in 2018 of 9 inches, early start to the wet season there. So to kind of give a summary of the overall water year, our water year just ended the end of April. And I know everyone's kind of seen how dry it's been over the last several months. And last year's wet season seems like a long time ago, but I just wanted to put this up here to show how our year ended. We actually ended about 90% of average, and that's about just shy of 52 inches with a 5.5 inch deficit. Our wet season was fairly average last year, and then we had the very early start to dry season here in September where we had a record-breaking dry month as well. So overall for the water year ended up pretty good. Unfortunately, the dry season's been a little lackluster as far as rainfall is concerned, with ending at about 73% of average and a 6.5 inch deficit. So to kind of go along with that, I wanted to highlight the outflows from all of our coastal structures. The blue numbers here are the amount of water released out of each structure for the entire water year since last May. And then the brown number is how much water has been released just since the dry season started. And obviously, we're in flood control mode during the wet times, but in dry season, we've been in water conservation mode. But you can see the big discrepancies in water volumes there, especially here at GG1 and COCO 1 for sure. I would like to note, kind of highlight when our date of last discharge occurred. And here at COCO 1 and GG1, we really haven't discharged any significant water since February. And then moving south through the system here at Henderson Creek, we haven't moved any water, significant water, since September. And the same thing here with the restoration here at SERP at S488. That has not really operated since September, almost a few days after dry season officially started. Fackie Union number 1 down here, it flows a lot longer just because there's no operable gates on that structure, but it did finally cease to flow back in March, and we actually were able to, there was some negative flow from the Gulf side into the freshwater side, just a little bit. So that's kind of overview of the water year. I'd like to move in a little bit and talk about the dry season and how this drought has developed. Back in March, over here on the left, you can see here BCB, the U.S. drought monitor wasn't showing any drought conditions for our area or really for the overall district. And then fast forward just 6 weeks or so later, and with the record-breaking March and the dry April as well, all of BCB and even the majority of the district was in a severe or moderate drought. And I pulled this one over here on May. This is their update just from a couple days ago. And as everyone knows, or at least our meteorologists are saying now, our wet season has officially started as of the 15th, and large areas of the district have received summertime style rainfall. So we have had some relief here in the BCB area in the last week. So now that drought monitor, the severity of that is starting to wane a little bit. There we go. So in addition to the drought monitor, the districts had a water user forum that the BCB has been participating in. And this is a new slide this time, and it kind of gives a snapshot of the current conditions of the system. And I want to highlight here the percentile classes here, the red, orange, green, blue, and black. Those are you know, where the water levels are for this time of year based on historic levels of that canal. So as you can see here, I'm sorry, I advanced one. So there has been some, this was just Monday when we did this on 5/18, and there are large areas of the canal system that were in this 10 to 25th percentile, Miller, Golden Gate, Maine, Fackie Union. And then I would highlight here the Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed. We did have some of these. I've added a few indicators that I normally put in there. Here we have Southern Crew, and then Lake Trafford as well. Both of those have dropped below the normal range, which is kind of this green indicator. It does show that the system was definitely starting to feel the effects of the lack of rainfall in the superficial aquifer. Then fast forward, this is just as of yesterday, and we've had some increases. You've seen a lot of the oranges and reds turn to greens and blues, and that's a good sign as we've gotten beneficial rainfall in the last week, and some of the canal levels have started to increase. So, you know, here in the Corkscrew, these have jumped up from their lower areas. Same thing with Lake Trafford, and it's nice to see here in the Estates area, Golden Gate, Maine, and Miller Canal and Fackie Union Canal have recovered some. So now to look a little bit deeper underground, to kind of look at the groundwater trends, we just picked these three here in Collier County to kind of highlight. But overall, the conditions here, you know, a lot of these were approaching their historic minimums, a couple of them, especially this one here by Cocoa One by Mockley Road. It was near the bottom of its period of record. The rainfall has brought that up considerably, and we've seen that all of these areas kind of tick up. I would highlight that the only one that's got a concern, you know, this yellow line here is kind of when we start to monitor these for some impact to the potential for the water resource, but it's starting to recover now and is not dipped down to the higher concern that would, you know, signal saltwater intrusion or something like that. I would note these here on the Lee County side, where they have had some water restrictions, or I guess they still have water restrictions ongoing now. These aquifer or these wells here have actually recovered some. These were down in the 10th percentile. They've now recovered some, which is nice to see. So I kind of wanted to give a visual perspective of the Fackie Union, or at least kind of the drought scenario. I know it's been dry lately, and I kind of wanted to show, well, has it ever been this really dry before? And I kind of shared in the past that some of the, yes, it's been this dry before in some of the rainfall charts, but this area here, we went out and took some pictures just to see what the canal looked like. So the pictures are highlighted in this kind of oval area here. So highlighted, and this is approximately the same reach. You've got May 2009 and 2008. It shows the canal completely dry, which is not unusual for this time of the year, right? Is the very peak of the dry season, right before someone turns the faucet on for us. And then May 2020 right here, this was just taken yesterday. You can see a similar effect. You've got all the fresh grass growth, but you do have very little water in there. But it usually is short-lived, and it won't be long before these canals are full once again. I just wanted to give a visual perspective there. So now I'll kind of stair step fairly quickly through the system, just to kind of give you where we are in terms of history and where our optimum ranges are as we progress into wet season. So here at GG1, again, the green band is where our water levels typically are, and the blue is the current year. So as we're approaching or just now entering wet season, we want to be inside this blue box, and we're right in track for where we want to, be for this time of year. So moving upstream to GG4 up here, again, you see the recession here. We've got some storage in this area still to hold some water and fill up the surface water so we can get water up here and get that blue line up here into this shaded box. Moving north a little bit, Cocoa 1, this holds fairly steady for most of the year, but even with that the lack of rainfall, it even started to recede. But it's recovered nicely as we enter wet season. And Cocoa 3, it's got a recession that it does as well, and some storage that we can gain. So we still need some additional rainfall in this reach for us to really get up to where we'd like to be. And now moving all the way down south to the Faki Union, I mentioned this one actually stopped flowing. So when that blue line crossed this kind of maroon color, the water upstream of it was actually below it, and Gulf water could actually come upstream potentially in just during times of high tide. So Faki Union number 5, as we move upstream, you can see this kind of large variability in the green band here that we'd like to, the water typically falls in. We did see the decline, as you saw from the pictures, and here we've got a little bit of room to go before we start getting more water in that canal, that we can actually start moving some water into this lower area that does need it more than this area. So Henderson Creek 1 down here, this is just off 951 area, and you've got the area that it's got a decline as well, and it does have some storage left in it before we do start releasing water to downstream estuaries. And Henderson Creek number 2, just upstream of that, again, we have quite a bit of storage here. What it looks like to me, if this is the start of wet season, we've hit our minimum for the year, and we'll start to see increases going forward. And jumping over to our Picayune, our SERP project that is online, we are low for this time of year, not our historic low, but we do have some storage that we need to make up upstream as water begins to stage up, and then we can start our restoration flows once the levels start to increase some. So we've kind of looked at where we've been. I kind of want to give a look forward. This is our long range, the NOAA outlook. And these have a tendency to change month to month, but I want to put them in here just to show it is a tool that we use to kind of guide trends. For our June outlook here, we do have above average chances for above average rainfall for pretty much all of South Florida. And then looking forward to wet season again, increased chances. And then even at the start of dry season, they're calling for. But I would expect these to change by the time we have our next board meeting. And then looking towards the immediate future, we have our 7-day outlook. And like I said, our meteorologists have said we're in full and wet season mode now. So we do have the focus on the West Coast for the next 7 days, which should bring us some more needed rainfall to help bring some of our canal levels up. Unfortunately, it might put a damper on Memorial Day plans. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any board member questions? Dan, I see your hands up.
Yes, thank you. Brad, the it seems like Faka Union 1 is always a place where got a reasonable volume of water leaving the system when we're able to stop it in the dry season from our other major outfalls to the tide. Obviously, that's because it's a fixed weir crest and we don't have the ability to operate it. How much of that issue will get resolved, or that losing water to tide gets resolved as Picayune Strand gets completed? Or is that something where we should look at doing an operable structure or something down there at Faka Union where we can try and hold some of that back once we hit dry season?
Sure. So to answer the first question, the Picayune, we do anticipate to have a reduction there in the amount of peak flows and the duration that it discharges out of that, since most of the water will be on the landscape and through sheet flow. I would expect it to decrease at Faka Union number 1 once we have, even next year potentially, if the Faka Union canal starts to, if that plugging occurs and we do get that pump station fully operational, I would expect to see some reduction next year as well. As far as the operable structure, maybe we need to look at doing that. Structure has been there a long time. There's nothing really wrong with it in its current form, but eventually it will need to be replaced, or just as a saltwater barrier, really. And maybe at that point, Picayune will be fully online and we'll have some ability to look at if an operable structure does make sense there, once we've got some history under our belt with how Picayune operates, to make sure that it warrants an operable structure, or maybe it's not needed. But definitely something we need to look at. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
I really appreciate the work you did, Brad, on those 2 additional slides. I think they really share the true picture there as the water levels relate to our canal system. And I appreciate you putting those together for us.
You're welcome.
Rosie, are there any raised hands from the public on the water conditions report?
Yes, Madam Chair. Dana McGregor has her hand raised.
Madam Chair, hi, Dana McGregor again. Okay, so the picture that Brad had up with the picture of the house in the dry canal, I believe it was the picture in the lower right-hand corner. That is actually my house. And I guess there's a weir between the Faka Union north of me near the the elementary school, maybe the elementary school and middle school. And I'm not sure if there's one further south, but that is what my canal looks like, literally 3 months out of the year. There are kids playing down there that we continuously worry about. And as a public service worker myself, my daughter has gotten stuck in that canal by walking across it thinking it's dry. So right now, if I went out and I took a picture and I sent it to y'all, that's what it looks like today. It's looked like that for 3 months now, and we lose canal bank all the time. So is there anything, Brad, in between north and south of that to where we can get more water? Not only that, but we also have city water running from our canal. So my husband and I have drilled 2 wells on our property. The first one doesn't work anymore. We've gone deeper, and I'm sure you can pull the records of how deep my second well is. So we out here do not have water when we need it the most during brush fire season. And I guess that's the end of my questions. Is there something, and if so, is there anything that we can use to get water further south? Because we are on another main from the city right out back of my backyard.
Madam Chair, we have no more hands that are raised.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Let's go ahead and move on to the monthly financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Basin Board members, Candida Heater. The monthly financial report that is in the package is through the month of March, so March 31st. Right now, the Basin has collected $13.6 million, and the budget was a $10.9 million budget. The reason why the additional increase in revenues is, again, due to the intergovernmental category where FEMA and DEM, Department of Emergency Management, has allocated or provided revenues back to the Basin for expenditures related to Hurricane Irma, dominantly in the debris removal. So that's about 124.1% of revenue collections. If you back that one-time money out of the bottom line revenues, you're at 97% of collection. So even though the monthly financial report does state that your ad valorem is slightly behind by about 1.3% compared to 5-year trends that we keep, you do have a 97% collection. I looked in the financial system today, so through May 22nd, you have collected an additional $300,000 in your ad valorem taxes, which gives you an ad valorem tax collection of $10.5 million out of 10.6. So that gets you about back on track according to trends. With that said, that's all I have on the monthly financial report.
Thank you, Candy. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? Rosie, do we have any comments from the public on this?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Candy. Moving on to the Basin Administrator's report. Lisa Keeler.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity just to take a few moments and share with you our operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm really proud of the Basin team, and so I wanted to take some time to talk about what we've been doing over the last 8 weeks. As the pandemic was reaching Florida, the district quickly responded to keep our employees safe. We implemented social distancing protocols, and because not all jobs can be done from home, our field station employees continued their mission-critical work outside but yet social distancing. And the administrative team transitioned to our flexible work-from-home operations. But before I get into the Basin work, I do have to just tell you a little bit about our information technology team. And I hope even before I start talking, the picture says it all. They have been our heroes through the COVID-19 pandemic. They worked tirelessly to ensure all employees were capable of working from home and that we had all the tools and resources needed so that we could carry on our mission critical work. They ensured that we could stay engaged with the public and our partners. They, in the first weekend that we transitioned to work from home, they successfully managed 900 employees in setting up their computers and testing us to make sure that everything was working the way we needed to. It was a lot of work and they did an excellent job. And so I'm very grateful to the IT team. Beginning March 16th, we transitioned to our homes and the Basin Administrative Office was closed to the public. However, everyone's desk phones were transferred to their cell phones so that we could continue to serve the public. And we also changed all of our messaging on our emails so that the public knew the best way to reach us. We knew it was vital to continue our essential services and serve the public, and everyone rolled up their sleeves and faced the new experience boldly. We met every day, and we still continue to meet every day through a virtual platform to talk about public projects and set our goals for what we want to accomplish each day and for the week. We also prepared for the upcoming hurricane season and are ready for our annual exercise next week. Charity has led the effort with board preparations over the last several weeks, and during this time away from the office, she became a fur mom as she adopted this great looking guy that you see in the picture here. During the last 8 weeks, I worked with Mark Wiederstein to prepare your tentative budget, which required many meetings with the various sections of the district that contribute to the basin budget. Board members, as you know, Candy and Julie are an absolute joy to work with, but it is Mark that really gives us, works hard with us and pulls this whole budget together. Candy and I comment many times that we would be lost without him, and I want to give Mark a special thank you for the work he has done from his home on the East Coast to support us here on the West Coast. Thank you, Mark. Now here's a peek of our engineering and modeling team working from home. We have Andy, Kevin, and Kent across the bottom, and Brad with his little guy helping to bring joy to his day. Over the last 8 weeks, this team has held weekly virtual coordination meetings with the field station, with Collier County, and the Corps. They conducted Picayune Strand Restoration project reviews for the Southwest Protection Feature, reviewed plans for filling in the Faca Union Canal, as well as performing reviews on the pump station operational manuals. They have continued their normal right-of-way and ERP permit reviews during this time, and they've even responded to requests from the public and gone out and investigated drainage concerns. As Juan had said, we held a virtual wet season coordination meeting with Collier County, and we even got to practice our joint coordination efforts with the county in anticipation of a rain event for Mother's Day that never came, but we still got to get out and practice. Kent hasn't skipped a beat either, and his modeling projects continue without delay, as Lucine talked about during her capital discussion. Kent has been working on the Cypress Canal Improvement Project, as well as our regional storage feasibility project, which is going to kick off later this year. Our regional partnership projects continued without any delays as well. Besides having his hands full with these the 2 cute kids that Sean has, his hands were kept busy as well during this time. He conducted virtual project coordination meetings with our partners, including FWC, FGCU, City of Naples, Collier County, and the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary in an effort to keep their projects moving and on time. Last week, you'll see pictures, he was out on Lake Trafford with FWC as they completed their eelgrass planting project as part of the Lake Trafford restoration efforts. During this time, he's also continued on our grants and issued 4 contracts and purchase orders. He's processed 2 contract amendments, as well as many invoices so our partners could get paid for the work that they have completed. Sean has also kicked off the fiscal year 21 regional partnerships and is working with our local partners on potential projects that may come to you for possible funding at your October board meeting. Board members, I'm really appreciative of the field operations and our administrative staff. It takes an amazing amount of discipline and perseverance to do these jobs during the pandemic, and I'm incredibly proud of our team. Thank you for your time and giving me the allowance to share a little bit about what we have been working on over the last 8 weeks. And back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Hats off to the entire team. It was a seamless transition to virtual work. And it was like one day you were in the office and the next day you were at home and nobody knew the difference. So it was great effort on everyone's part and terrific district support as well. And I couldn't be prouder of the whole team, especially the new dog that Charity ended up with. So thank you so much for that report. Are there any other
Thank you.
comments from the board members at this time? Thanks again, Lisa, and thanks to everyone who made it all possible. Let's go ahead
you.
and move on to general public comments. Rosie, are there any raised hands?
Yes, Madam Chair. Dana McGregor, followed by Brad Cornell.
First, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say thank you. It's my first time ever doing the virtual. You guys do an amazing job. I know it's not easy. So please understand that my questions and concerns come from the heart and from the children that are in our neighborhood where I live. Thank you guys for working through this whole COVID and making this possible. So I'm not sure how questions are normally answered. Maybe if I can get an email back from someone on the board, it would be wonderful, just so I know how this works in the future, because I am an advocate for the safety of our community and the health and well-being. So thank you again for doing what you do, and I appreciate it, and have a blessed weekend.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Next, we have Brad Cornell, followed by Andrea Threlkeld.
Thank you. Again, it's Brad Cornell with Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida. Thanks for the opportunity to make an additional public comment. I just wanted to say thank you to particularly Madam Chair for leading the effort to have the district convene a stakeholders partnership to address water quality problems down there in the area of the Picayune Strand Southwest Protection Feature. This has been a concern of Audubon and our colleagues in the conservation community, as well as DEP and some land managers in the area for some time. And this has been a very encouraging response. We had a kickoff meeting this week that was informative. It was well participated in. It was diverse. The stakeholder working group is large. It includes the farmers and conservation groups, DEP, the Water Management District, Big Cypress Basin, and we felt like there was a real sense of commitment on the part of the district and the basin to help lead this effort and see an effective outcome by this fall. So anyway, I wanted to draw your attention to that and say thank you to Chair Roman for helping lead that effort. So appreciate it and looking forward to working as best we can. Audubon will contribute as much as we can through this process. Our science staff and policy staff are definitely committed to this. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrea Threlkeld, followed by Jeffrey Jordan.
Hello again, and agreed. Thank you everybody for taking the time to let us speak and for listening to us and hearing our concerns. Ms. McGregor, listening to her, she sounds like she's in a very similar situation as we are with the way the canal bank is. A couple other concerns we have are, yes, she said the erosion, and I've spoken to several of my neighbors who have talked about the erosion over the past 12 years or so, and the fact if we continuously remove trees, how that will affect the land and the breakdown of the land, as well as the privacy. We live west of airports, and a lot of people tend to fish off that airport bridge right by Spanky's. And several weeks ago, after we were asked to remove some of our privacy bushes, we had random people walking up and down our banks. And since we were all home at that time, some of our neighbors with very small children had random people in their backyards, which is a bit scary. But I know everybody will take our concerns to heart and will follow through with what is best for both your side of it, the environment side of it, and our concerns as well. And lastly, I just wanted to thank Lisa Keeler Lisa has been a huge advocate, a wonderful person to work with, very responsive, very good, and we appreciate everything she has done for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeffrey Jordan.
Sorry, I'm a little slow at unmuting.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
have
Jordan.
various concerns along our small section of the canal that is just before GGE1. One of my concerns is that the community in which you live, as far as a business or a government entity, is everybody keeps using acronyms, and acronyms are not going to mean anything to the public. We don't know what the acronyms are. Some of the things that are bothering me are that when they ripped out all of the vegetation on the north side of the bank, our noise conditions exploded exponentially. Not only that, we get golf balls in our backyard. We've also been told that we can't put trampolines, we can't put swing sets, we can't put fences, we can't put privacy bushes between our houses. We actually had somebody who was working for Bears Paw working on their pump to draw water out of the canal, who was working in his underwear. I've sent pictures of this to Lisa Keeler, climbing up and down a ladder into the canal with no shoes, with only his underwear on. The other thing is that on the bank, they mow down everything when they come through. There are selective grasses that should be allowed to grow long. That provides homes for the wildlife. When I went over there and addressed the situation, I was told by a South Florida water management person, don't worry, they'll float, when the nestlings came out of their nests because they were weed whacking things at a furious pace. They need to repair and pick up after they're cutting. They need to maintain that bank. When I mentioned the invasive species of plants that were growing on the bank, the people that were actually doing the maintenance said, we don't have the license to do that. So they need to have licensed people doing that work. And they need to have permission before they enter our properties. All we ask for is respect, privacy, seclusion. That's what we bought our properties for.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Next, I have Dana McGregor.
Yes, ma'am. And to follow up what he said, not only privacy, seclusion, but the right to water. We live out here and we are starved of water. It goes into the county and it goes into the city. If they opened up our canal out here in Factory Union, and you look in your picture that was just on there, my house was the one that was used. I can walk out there now and take a picture. That subground water, I had the city come out and look at and said, Miss McGregor, we assure you it's not our pipe that's leaking. There is no water here right now. I had the county come out. I had the city come out. I had Factory Union, the Southwest Florida Water Management, out at my house after I started losing 10 feet of fill off my property. So if they can at least hear what we're saying about do not remove vegetation that is holding our property back, please, 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 at least give us water to where we can drink, live, and flush toilets.
Madam Chair, that's it for public comments.
Thank you, Rosie. And I want to thank the members of the public who took time out of their schedules today to share your concerns, your comments, and your recommendations with the Big Cypress Basin Board and the staff. I can assure you that I have personally been involved with the Basin Administrator, Lisa Keeler, and district staff from our field operations department in looking at the issues related to the canal, the Golden Gate Canal. And as you'll recall, those of you who are from that area, there was a project that was underway before we all had the safer at home warning for COVID-19. And that project was put on hold so that we could take a look at how to go about approaching this and look at other options and find the neighbors concerned. And I made that commitment to Commissioner Penny Taylor. So I'm still committed to that. We got slowed down a bit because of being at home, but I plan to get out to your area again. I've already been out there once. I'll meet with you and I'll do whatever it takes for us to come to a position where we can protect the community from flooding, and at the same time, maybe strike a balance. And I know Lisa Keeler is committed to that as well. And any emails that you'd like to send, please send to Lisa Keeler, and she will distribute to the board, or she will get back in touch with you. But that is your contact. You can always send me an email anytime you want, and any other board member as well. But also, please send your emails to Lisa Keeler, and that would be much appreciated. But you have been heard today. I thank you so much. I know that there's another resident that has a concern over at FACA Union, and I'm sure Lisa Keeler has already made a note of that, and we'll be taking a look at it. So I appreciate your comments today, and I hope that you will participate in upcoming Basin Board meetings on other subjects as well. The next item on our agenda is board comment. And are there any board members who have any comments that they'd like to share? Marielle.
Hi, Marielle Naijan-Delitan, for the record. First of all, I want to thank Lisa for keeping us all, the board members, in the loop with regards to what's going on Golden Gate Canal. For the public who chimed in today, I just want you to know you have been heard actually by the board. We have all asked questions, instructed staff to look into things further, to figure out if there are ways to compromise. Managing these canals is not a simple thing. It's 143 plus miles of canals that we have to maintain, and we spent millions of dollars after Hurricane Irma removing trees out of canals. But I also understand the flip side, that you have to look at them, you live on them, and you apparently, and I was not aware of this, are losing earth property to unstabilized canals. So one of the things I would ask staff, and I don't know if this is an answer that can be given today or if this is something that can come back to us in June or July, who is responsible if the canal erodes? Are we to maintain a certain slope in those canals? I would think we would, but is it our responsibility? I don't know the answer to that, and I'm hoping somebody can answer that. And again, if not today, at least by the next board meeting. And And then, you know, as far as the Faca Union Canal being empty, I understand this is not my area of expertise, but I suspect that the answer is probably going to be there's not a ton we can do about it until we get to plug the Faca Union Canal to the south. But that would be really Brad's expertise area, and maybe Miss McGregor can work with him closer to see if there's anything that can be done. I might, like, again, I suspect probably not until we are allowed to plug the Faca Union down in the Picayune Strand restoration area. And I would also just kind of like to say, you know, I actually walked the Golden Gate Canal with Miss Keeler. I took a look at what was going on. I asked her to try to get a nesting survey done, which I believe she's working on. I have spoken with staff in West Palm and here about, you know, potential for putting in plantings. I don't know cost-wise or irrigation-wise if it's going to be feasible to, you know, to change our methodology for cleaning up our clippings. That to me is sort of critical. So I just want the public to know you have been heard. We are working on it behind the scenes. We're working with the county, working with local staff, West Palm staff to try to find resolution and to come to some kind of middle ground with everyone. And I also just wanted to tell Sean, if you need any labor in the future for projects, feel free to call on me. I noticed you're out there planting in the lake and that looked kind of fun. And that's it for my comments. Thank you.
Excellent comments, Mariel. Lisa, did you have something that you'd like to follow up with?
Yes, Madam Chair, just the fact that to address the comments just made, we can work on some information and bring back to the board. The canal bank erosions are something that we have been talking between Lucene and the capital side, as well as Juan and Jesus from the field station maintenance side. So we're happy to work on that and bring something back to you at your next meeting.
That's excellent. And I see, Dan, you have your hand raised. Dan Waters, you have your hand raised.
I do, yes, thank you. I forgot to come off mute. So I'll be quick, and I won't go over and repeat everything that you and Marielle said very well. You know, we understand the perspective of the residents that live on the canals, and obviously appreciate that they're taxpayers into the basin, and so that their perspective matters greatly. The flip side of that I hope they, the folks that are here listening and seeing our meeting today, that they understand the perspective of our staff in the agency, and that one of the reasons that our community really fared very, very well in Hurricane Irma was the fact that our canals were in really good condition. It was a pretty drastic contrast between the flooding that we had, which was very limited in Collier County, when you had these water bodies that were open and available to flow. And that's because we have maintained those canals and have them in a position where we don't have blockages, we don't have a lot of vegetation in them that is blocking flow and holding water up that ends up flooding houses. You know, and that's compared to what we saw in Lee County, where they've got the disadvantage of their flowways in many cases are natural rivers and creek type systems that just get terribly overgrown. And if you get a big storm like Irma was, the water has to stack up so high at the top end of the system to be able to push through all those blockages, that it leads to people's homes being flooded upstream. And that's the kind of thing that we're obviously trying to avoid. And obviously, when we're looking at a hurricane or some significant rain event, with the miles and miles of canal that we have, it's not something you can just go clean up and get ready in the week or 2 weeks in advance of it. It's a 365-day a year process to do that. Likewise, on the discussions of the low water levels in the canals out in the FACA Union, I think one of the things that hopefully you saw in terms of, even though we're in a drought, a lot of the water levels are about where they have historically been. And part of that is because of some of the capital projects and things that we've done over time, where we now have the ability that we didn't used to have to operate our weirs remotely and try and save as much water as we can at the end of the dry season. And the hope is that some of the work that we're doing in the Picayune Strand downstream of the FACA Union Canal will help get us closer to being able to save that water and limit what we lose to tide at the end of every wet season going into the dry season.
Anything else, Dan?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a board comment on a different topic. I'd like to thank Brad Cornell for the kind words. He mentioned the sub-regional water quality feasibility study in Collier County. We had the kickoff meeting yesterday, and I just would like to provide a little background to the board on this effort. The district proposed a collaborative water quality feasibility study with the Big Cypress Basin and local stakeholders in Collier County that would include evaluating current and future flows under US 41, County Road 92 south and west of the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Project, which is the Picayune Strand Restoration Project. Last week, the governing board approved the proposal, and within a week, we had the kickoff meeting and the stakeholders were ready to begin. So what will be happening is the stakeholders are going to be working with the district staff to review the existing data and evaluate sub-regional water quality conditions and flows into Collier Seminole State Park, Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, and the 10,000 Islands National Wildlife Refuge, and come up with solutions to address flows and improvements in water quality. The final result will be a conceptual plan along with a cost-benefit analysis to address flows and water quality improvements. And what the group is looking for as a result of the kickoff meeting discussion is to do an interim, have something interim by this fall that can be tweaked and worked upon and developed into the final report after the first of the year. So it's an ambitious effort, but based upon the enthusiasm and the commitment by the stakeholders yesterday, I think it's going to be a very, very positive effort. And I wanted to provide that background to the board and to the public on what's going on with that. Also, I would like to, in closing, thank the staff, both from the district and from the basin, for the support of the basin's first virtual meeting. I know one of the public speakers thought that we do this all the time, but for the basin, this was our first virtual meeting, and it was so great to have so much participation. And I wanted to thank everyone for that. Our next meeting is July 6th at 1:30 p.m. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. And I would like to thank the staff as well for all their fine support. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.